Lady in the Lake by Laura Lippman. In 1965, Maddie Schwartz lives a comfortable life in the suburbs of Baltimore as a wife and mother. She feels dissatisfied with her life after almost 20 years of marriage and decides to leave her husband. Maddie gets an apartment and starts looking for a roommate and a job. She doesn't have much luck until a chance encounter at a jewelry store. After trying to sell her wedding ring, she meets Judith Weinstein, a young clerk working at the store who is also looking for a roommate. Judith invites Maddie to a meeting of the Stonewall Democratic Club. Maddie's mother starts calling her every morning to discuss Maddie's life choices and what she calls her reduced circumstances. One morning, her mother asks Maddie if she has heard of the disappearance of Tessie Fine, an 11-year-old girl from their synagogue who was last seen at a tropical fish store. Maddie's mother insists that she help search for the girl. Maddie agrees and calls Judith to join her. Maddie and Judith head to the synagogue where volunteers are being organized to search for the girl. They are told that this is a job for men only and that women should stay home. Maddie argues with the man in charge and says she and Judith will conduct their own search. They end up at Suburban Arboretum, walking the paths and looking for any signs of the girl. It's almost time for the park to close when Maddie has an idea of where to look. She remembers parking at the Arboretum with boys she dated in high school and thinks that the secluded area by the fence near Silburn Avenue might be a good place to hide a body. She and Judith head down the hill and find Tessie Fine. A police officer named Ferdy Platt, who was the first to arrive at the scene when Tessie was discovered, stops by Maddie's apartment to check on her. He insists on inspecting the sliding door in her bedroom to make sure it's secure. As soon as they are in the bedroom, he grabs Maddie and starts kissing her. Maddie is surprised, but quickly forgets that she should be offended and enjoys his attentions. He tells Maddie that he will be back and helps her find a new apartment in a better neighborhood. They start a passionate affair, meeting at Maddie's apartment and keeping their relationship a secret. Ferdy suggests that Maddie straighten her hair, something she has always wanted to try but knew her mother would disapprove of. He knows a woman who will do it for a good price. Maddie likes her new hair, but her son, Seth, is not impressed. Judith, still living at home with her parents and brothers, finds out from Maddie's mother that Maddie has a phone. She calls her to follow up about going to a meeting of the Stonewall Democratic Club. Maddie seems vague and distracted, and Judith hears some strange noises on the other end of the phone. Maddie is worried that she will not be able to pay her bills and decides to fake a robbery. She puts her wedding ring in a potted plant, messes up her apartment, and runs out into the street screaming for help. Ferdy Platt is the responding officer, and it's clear that he knows that Maddie is lying about being robbed. He does not turn her in, however, and helps her get out of her lease and find a new apartment. He also insists that she get a phone installed. A local reporter named Bob Bauer hears about the two women who discovered Tessie Fine and tracks Maddie down. He wants to tell her story, but she refuses. Maddie tells him about the man from the pet store, Stephen Corwin, and says that the police suspect he is the killer and have found evidence of his guilt. Bob Bauer follows up on the lead, interviewing the police and Corwin's mother. His story about the murder is a huge scoop, and he gets a lot of praise from his colleagues. Maddie uses her information to leverage a job as an assistant to the man who writes the helpline column at the Star. Her job is dull, mostly opening mail and answering the phone, but she is determined to use the position to get into the newsroom as a reporter. Ferdy tells Maddie that Cleo Sherwood's body has been found in the fountain at Druid Hill Park. Maddie is surprised that it took so long for anyone to notice that she was missing and that the story isn't getting much attention from the newspapers. She decides to write an article about Cleo Sherwood and asks Judith's brother, Donald, who works for a state senator, for information. Donald doesn't know anything about Cleo, but tells Maddie that she should forget about the story. He says that it's common for powerful men to have affairs and that no one would care that Cleo was dating a married man. Maddie decides to find out who Cleo's boyfriend was and goes to the Flamingo Club to interview the bartender. He is rude and unhelpful, but eventually admits that Cleo was a special person. The owner, Shel Gordon, tells Maddie to leave the club. He says that she doesn't belong there and that the Flamingo is a respectable place with standards. Outside the club, the bartender tells Maddie to leave Cleo alone and that she was just a girl who went out with the wrong man. Maddie goes to Cleo Sherwood's parents' house to ask them about Cleo's life and her boyfriend. She finds out that Cleo was a single mother who lived with a roommate and had 2 young sons who were being raised by her parents. Maddie also discovers a fur stole in the house and recognizes it as something from her son's classmate's family's fur store. Cleo's mother explains that she found the stole in Cleo's apartment after she disappeared, along with several expensive dresses that had been altered to fit Cleo. The oldest son, Little Man, gets upset during the interview and hits Maddie in the shins with a toy truck. Maddie leaves the apartment, thinking that Cleo must have been having an affair with a married man who bought her nice clothes. Judith is dating a police officer named Paul and fixes him up with a friend on a double date. The other man on the date, Patrick Monaghan, falls for Judith and starts pursuing her, even though she's still seeing Paul and he's still seeing the other woman. Judith tells Maddie that she wants to find a private place to spend time with Patrick. Maddie doesn't tell Judith about her affair with Ferdy. Maddie and Judith and their dates go to the movies, but Maddie ends up screaming and running out of the theater because the man sitting next to her puts his hand on her knee. Judith and Paul take Maddie home, and she feels guilty for ruining their evening. A reporter named Jack Diller, who has been covering the police beat for 30 years, knows that Maddie has been asking questions about Cleo Sherwood. He tells a patrolman named Ferdy Platt that he thinks Maddie is getting information from a cop and that her interest in the Cleo Sherwood case is just a way to gather information to give to her boyfriend. Ferdy denies knowing anything about Cleo and says that he has been to Maddie's apartment only because he is concerned about her safety. Maddie goes to the morgue with Jack Diller to look at Cleo's body and is shocked by the condition of the corpse. The medical examiner tells Maddie that they have not been able to determine a cause of death. Diller takes Maddie to lunch and explains that no one cares about Cleo because she was just a round heels who went out with the wrong man. He suggests that Maddie write a story about the psychic instead, saying that she will make up a good story and that it would be funny if the psychic didn't see Maddie coming. Maddie meets with the psychic, Madame Claire, who tells her that Cleo's mother brought her an ermine stole and that Cleo's last moments were spent in a yellow room. Maddie doesn't believe anything Madame Claire says and thinks that she is a fraud. She walks home, aware of how she stands out in the neighborhood as a single white woman, and starts to have a fantasy about being attacked and then rescued by Ferdy. When she gets home, Ferdy is waiting for her on the fire escape. Maddie starts to think about all the unsolved mysteries in the letters she opens for the helpline column. She remembers a letter she received about the lights going out at the fountain at Druid Hill Park and asks Bob Bauer to have lunch with her. She wants to know why no one seems to care about Cleo Sherwood's death and why the newspapers aren't doing more to find out who killed her. Bob Bauer tells her that Cleo's death is not a story and that no one cares because she was just a girl who went out with the wrong man. He does agree to help Maddie learn some basic reporting skills and takes her to police headquarters to meet John Diller. Maddie and Judith go to lunch together, and Judith tells Maddie about her new boyfriend, Patrick Monaghan. Maddie doesn't tell Judith that she is having an affair with Ferdy. She tells Judith that she went to the Flamingo Club to ask questions about Cleo, but that she was thrown out. Judith explains that Shel Gordon is backing a man named Ezekiel Taylor for state senate, and that maybe he was the one who was having an affair with Cleo. Maddie realizes that Taylor is the owner of Easy Cleaners, and that the dry cleaning receipts are the common element in the clothes that Cleo's mother found. Maddie goes to the Taylor's house and asks Hazel Taylor about Cleo and New Year's Eve. She tells Mrs. Taylor that Cleo's mother believes that Cleo was going to marry Ezekiel Taylor. Mrs. Taylor shuts the door in her face. Donald Weinstein, Judith's brother who works for a state senator, reluctantly agrees to meet Maddie to discuss her questions about Cleo Sherwood. He tells her that it is common for powerful men to have affairs and that it doesn't matter if Ezekiel Taylor was dating Cleo because no one would care. Maddie and Ferdy continue to see each other, and Maddie starts to ask him more questions about his life and his ambitions. She learns that he wants to be a homicide detective. He tells her that he loves her. Maddie goes to the opening of the 6th Easy Cleaners and asks Ezekiel Taylor about Cleo. He tells her that he doesn't know Cleo and that he has hundreds of customers. Maddie tells him that Cleo's mother believes that Cleo was going to marry him. He laughs and tells her that girls tell their mothers a lot of stories. Maddie goes to see Cleo's mother and insists on walking her home from the grocery store. She learns that Cleo was planning to take a trip, but that she would let her mother know when she was going. Mrs. Sherwood also explains that Cleo gave her a jacket as a late Christmas present that she had altered to fit her. Maddie asks Mrs. Sherwood why anyone would want to kill Cleo, and Mrs. Sherwood tells her that she wasn't a bad girl, but that she always spoke her mind. When they arrive back at the apartment, Cleo's sister, Alice, asks Maddie what she wants. Maddie tells her nothing. Maddie keeps working on the helpline column and tries to finish her work early so she can go to the city desk and ask Cal Weeks for more assignments. She learns that Ezekiel Taylor is opening another Easy Cleaners and asks if she can cover the ribbon-cutting ceremony. She goes to Gwyn Oaks and tries to interview Taylor, but he tells her that it is an honor to represent his district and that he still needs his job. Maddie tells him that she knows he was having an affair with Cleo Sherwood and that Cleo's mother believes that she was going to marry him. Taylor laughs at her and tells her that he doesn't know all of his customers and that girls tell their mothers a lot of stories. Maddie thinks about all the men in her life and how she has always been able to get them to do what she wants. She wonders if Cleo Sherwood was the same way. Maddie and Ferdy continue to see each other, and Maddie thinks about how they are like two trains, traveling on different tracks and just passing by each other for a brief moment in time. She realizes that Ferdy has no idea that she faked the robbery and that her wedding ring is actually hidden in a flower pot. Maddie asks Ferdy if he likes baseball, and they end up going on a date to an Orioles game together. They pretend that they don't know each other and chat politely about the game. Maddie notices that Ferdy seems happy and relaxed and realizes that he loves baseball. He tells her that he wishes he had caught the ball that was hit into the stands because he would have given it to a kid. Maddie realizes that Ferdy is a good person and that she could fall in love with him. Ferdy tells Maddie that the police now believe that Stephen Corwin's mother was his accomplice and helped him dispose of Tessie Fine's body. He asks her not to write about the case because he doesn't want anyone to know that he was the one who told her about Tommy Ludlow. Maddie promises him that she won't write anything that could get him into trouble. Maddie goes to Angela Corwin's house and tells her that she knows she helped her son dispose of Tessie Fine's body. Mrs. Corwin tries to stab Maddie and tells her that she was trying to help by putting the girl out of her misery. Maddie escapes and calls the police. Mrs. Corwin is arrested and her son is sentenced to death. Maddie spends the night at her ex-husband's house while she recovers from being stabbed. She learns that Milton has a new girlfriend, Allie, and that he plans to sell the house and move on with his life. He tells Maddie that he will pay for her lawyer and make sure that she is taken care of. Maddie goes back to work and continues to work on the helpline column. She tries to ignore her feelings for Ferdy, knowing that their relationship is impossible. Ferdy goes to Maddie's apartment to break up with her. He tells her that everyone knows that he was the one who gave her the information about the Cleo Sherwood case and that he has lost his job. He says that he loves her and that his happiest day of the past year was going to the baseball game with her. Maddie tells him that she doesn't want to be anyone's wife again and that she doesn't want to lose herself. Ferdy tells her that he has already lost himself. They have sex one last time, and Ferdy leaves in the morning. Maddie goes to work and finds out that Cleo Sherwood's father has shot Tommy Ludlow. She goes to the Sherwoods' apartment and interviews Cleo's mother. Maddie writes a story about the shooting and a sidebar about Cleo's life and how her mother is about to lose both her daughter and her husband. Maddie continues to work at the Beacon and becomes a successful columnist. She has several relationships with men over the years but never marries again. She thinks about Cleo Sherwood and Ferdy Platt often and wonders what would have happened if she had made different choices. If you enjoyed this audio summary, please consider liking this video and subscribing to get notified when we post our next summary.